Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Bourbon-n-Blockchain Happy Hour. This is where you're going to find some crypto news and crypto events that we talk about. And we just try to provide all that to you in a quick, easy format. But today we have a special guest, Justin. Justin is the COO of GridPlus hardware wallets. And we're very, very excited to have him today to give you guys another perspective when it comes to talking about all the different crypto news and articles. So we're very glad to have him. Justin, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Half asleep. I'm going to try and keep you guys engaged, but thanks so much for having me on tonight, Draco.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll do just fine after I heard you popped some of that. I think what did you say you were drinking again tonight? It's not bourbon.
I know you had to call me out. It's Lafroig. Yeah, it's some Scotch. You know, it's the whiskey I had on hand. I do love
they're
it.
in the same family. They're all in the whiskey family, right?
You know, like they're cousins. I like bourbon too.
Exactly. Yeah, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some current events, we're going to talk about some news, and then we'll move our way into talking a little bit about Grid and GridPlus and what they're doing. So without any further holding you guys up, let's just go ahead and get into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is let's see here. I don't know why it's not popping up.
Oh,
there we go.
There it is.
All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is some of the biggest news that's happened in the crypto world recently. We're going to sit here and talk about a digital cryptocurrency presidential order that took place on Tuesday night going into Wednesday. So this is very recent. This is something that happened. So pretty much in summary, what we're talking about is that the President of the United States put out a presidential order that says that he's going to assign multiple agencies within the United States government to come up with different aspects of regulations for cryptocurrency. Basically, what they're trying to do is make sure that they're protecting consumers and they're doing various things with cryptocurrency. But some of the interesting things that they said was that they wanted to stay ahead of the curve and be at the forefront of digital innovation. So this is the first topic we'll discuss, and as our guest, Justin, we'll have you go first. What do you think about this topic in this news?
Well, I think we're all bracing ourselves for the executive order and anticipating the worst. GridPlus, we're based out of the U.S. We're headquartered in Austin, Texas. I'm based out of Boston. So being a crypto company in the United States, especially with the amount of focus that there is on it today, you have to watch the news. We follow the people trying to work with our legislators, like the Chamber of Digital Commerce, Coin Center. They're all doing fantastic work to kind of bring people even the basics of this technology so that they make sensible choices. Because anyone who's in crypto knows, sometimes what we hear about it from mainstream media and from our politicians themselves, it's somewhat based in a misunderstanding of the technology. So that educational outreach is important, but it's also scary that, we're building on shifting sand and we know this area is getting scrutinized. But it turned out to not be anything nearly as bad as we were bracing for. And there's, like you mentioned, that focus on exploring CBDCs for the US and our own digital currency. So.
Yeah, I think people in general were nervous or scared about what was going to happen from this administration. And me personally, I thought that they were going to jump the gun and do something overly bearish or, something that could potentially destroy the system for U.S. citizens. But I think this is actually a better approach. And I think that by saying we're going to take our time and do this one step at a time, I think it's much harder to scrutinize that from that point of view.
Yeah, I have to agree on that. Sometimes the rhetoric is just deeply concerning, but staying cautiously optimistic.
Absolutely. So next we'll have Mr. Myron.
Man, I never thought I would say this, but Biden pumped crypto for a little bit. It was like a sharp increase for a couple hours, and of course now it's sold off. But man, just like gas prices going up, but they stay up there though. But I was hoping crypto was gonna stay up there. And so this, I guess, just like what Justin said and what you said, Draco, this basically, I think people were expecting bearish news, and this wasn't that bearish. Basically, they're gonna recognize crypto for what it is. But you said they're trying to stay ahead of innovation. I'll say this, man. I'm the innovation, man. I bought Doge Elon Musk's girlfriend's cat coin, man. That's innovation right there. I'm staying ahead of the curve. But I think this is good news. It's the government recognizing crypto for what it is, and not coming out saying, "Hey, we're gonna ban this," like what China did. So I think this is good.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Mr. Maverick?
Yeah, so hey, I did a little digging after, we were all curious what was going to come out. And when you watch the mainstream media, I felt like I wasn't getting the full story. And I was like, hey, this can't be this positive, right? So, I dove into YouTube and dove into blogs. And, you're right. At the end of the day, all he was doing was essentially the executive order is ordering different departments, right, throughout the government to do research. I mean, it's that simple. They're saying, hey, go learn about this stuff. Let's figure it out, wrap our heads around it, and then reconvene. And hopefully by that time, it's going to take them a long time to do this, but hopefully by that time, they'll be able to come out with some practical solutions if they feel there's a need to do so. So, yeah, that's kind of what I drew from it. What about you, Smokey?
Yeah, I think the biggest fear is what exactly do they want to do? Because a central exchange, for example, there's already a law on the books where central exchanges are going to 1099 you starting in 2023, and they already do in certain circumstances already. They're already KYCing, having know your customer laws with various central exchanges. So I think the biggest worry is that some agency passes crazy laws or crazy regulations where you have a KYC law for every single DeFi project. I think that'd be the worst case scenario. Do I think it'll happen? Probably not, but I do worry that there's going to be some fear. There's going to be some scenario where they KYC every DeFi project, and then you're going to drive more and more projects underground. Right now, if you're in DeFi, you know that most of these projects already don't dox. Now, if the government starts going after various DeFi projects because of harsh regulations, you're going to see more and more undoxed DeFi projects, which would actually create a less safe atmosphere in the crypto space. So hopefully they don't go too far. Hopefully, they don't go KYC crazy in DeFi, and yeah, hopefully they move slow.
Yeah, I think that brings up two good points. And, before we move on, I think we'll try to get a comment on this. I think there's two issues that are going to come up. Number one, I think we can all agree that part of the reason why they're making these moves is the government wants to get their piece of the pie. They want to earn a certain percentage on all of this because as of right now, outside of just taxes, they have no other control. So they're just getting the taxes. And because they don't have a bigger piece of the pie, they have less ability to control how many people are being forced to pay those taxes. So that's number one. And number two, the other issue that we want to look at here is we want to make sure that they don't get into a position of custody. And one of the big things that I've heard a lot about, and I definitely want Justin to talk about this, it's great for the space for banks to offer crypto. That would allow a lot of people to get into crypto. That would bring your typical user right to the forefront of being able to knock on the door and say, hey, bank, I trust you. Give me crypto. The issue with that is which we've seen with other governments very recently. These are things that used to be conspiracy, but now they've happened in Canada and in Ukraine and in Russia and all of this, where governments can go and shut that down and control the bank and take your money. So I think that's something that we have to be very careful of, that we don't allow that to get too rampant. So again, to reiterate, the first issue is the government's going to get their money. And I think there's nothing we can do about that. That's just something we have to accept. But I think one of the broader things that we have to be careful of is custody. Any thoughts on that, Justin?
Yeah, so there's two real critical issues that you touched on there. One is sort of mainstream adoption, and crypto achieving systemic importance in our world makes it so that we may not see some of this draconian regulation. But on the other hand, I think you're very much right about the government wanting a piece of their pie. So what are their considerations? They bring up sanctions a lot, but there's more transparency with the public blockchain than there is with cash. And the other thing is, we have these KYC AML rules for all of the crypto on and off ramps right now. But, we saw in response to what was going on with freezing of accounts and with Russia and the invasion of Ukraine, that Jesse Powell from Kraken in the United States, even before this executive order came out, just told everybody, even here in the Western world, that get your crypto off of exchanges if you're not transacting. For a lot of people, That's not how they interact with crypto. Most people getting their feet wet in the space. There's a certain degree of comfort with using a custodial solution like that. But really, the promise of crypto is only realized by self-custody, which is still pretty terrifying, especially for new users.
Yeah, and I think that it all comes with education too, right? And we talk about this a lot, and I think that it needs to be something that is discussed more openly. Is don't only just get into crypto by doing your research by yourself and all of that stuff. Even if you're a lurker, you're not somebody that wants to contribute or type a lot. Get into some groups, get into some cryptocurrency groups, so that you can learn from these individuals, and then start to hear this stuff, because not a lot of people understand when you hear not my keys, not my crypto. A lot of people have heard of that, but they don't really know what that means. So get into these groups and start asking questions to learn more, so that you're a better, more well-rounded individual in crypto. We talk about that a lot. It to be our group. Just find a group that you find like-minded people that are involved in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I know. My first 6 months in crypto, I think I kept everything on a central exchange. I just thought to myself, nothing bad's ever going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But with all the headlines in the news and all this, government crackdown on crypto, I think, now more than ever, when people say, hey, don't leave your stuff on a central exchange, I think you mean it now more than ever. You got to get your crypto off a central exchange and get it onto a wallet, preferably a hardware wallet, but just get it off the central exchanges, because the government's going to start, looking at it more and coming up with reasons to take it, at some point in the future.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll move on to our next topic here. The next topic that we're going to discuss tonight is China's digital. Now, is it the yuan? Is that what they're calling it, or the
It's
yuan?
yuan.
Yuan.
Digital yuan.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Myron. So China's making a digital yuan, and it's targeted, from a new bill by these senators and stuff like that. So, China's been doing this for a while, where they've had their own digital currency for their government, and now other governments are starting to do it. And there's multiple governments that have done this. So this is something that the United States is looking at doing as well. But specifically in this article, they're talking about how they're allowing this to potentially allow Russia to evade global sanctions and things of that nature. So we'll talk about this topic. So Myron Gaines, you're first up on the list.
So I think this is China is probably going to be the first country that actually gets this out, because they, unlike here, they don't have to vote for anything. If the government wants to do anything, they can do it. I think we said in the previous shows that China is pretty much the furthest, I think one of the most furthest along the cashless society, where everything is basically paid by app, or you're not. It's almost like you can't use cash in China anymore. I think what this article also talked about is that it claims that China, you can use a digital yuan to surveil U.S. citizens, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very much true. I mean, the TikTok, that one of the biggest concerns is that China has all this data. China has all these, these videos, they have access to it. And I think China built a lot of infrastructure in Africa as well. And there's I think they actually found in one of the, it's not an embassy, but a huge meeting place they had over there, building that Chinese built, that they were sending the information directly back to China. So I think this is one. I think what I feel about that is digital yuan is going to come. It's probably might be the first country to fully adopt digital or cryptocurrency that they made. That's is not decentralized, it's centralized by the government, and the intention will be to track literally every single purchase. I think this is a concern to the US in a way that I don't really see, I guess, US people using this. I think this is, maybe I'm wrong, but there's been talks that China and Russia are kind of making moves to move off US dollar as reserve currency. Are they moving directly to their own currency, or are they going to maybe straight up switching to a cryptocurrency? I think that's a huge speculation. But other than that, man, I hate to see that they're making crypto a centralized thing. I think that's against the idea, but it's a good technology, right?
Mr. Maverick.
Yeah, we've been talking about this quite a bit, right? In different forms and capacities, different countries. U.S. has been talking about it. Heck, that's part of the executive orders. They want to learn enough to where they can leverage the same type of technology. It's coming. I think we all see the writing on the wall. Now, how it looks by the end of it, who knows? But I agree. I think Senator Ted Cruz is one of those that signed on to this. And he's one of the people that I really believe understands probably more so than most the applications and the use case, and probably even how it could be used against us in this case. My head, I just don't, I don't have the knowledge to be able to wrap my head around how it can be used to track everything. But hey, knowledge is power, and if you can track everybody down to the penny, where and when, then yeah, I think that definitely gives any country leverage in general.
Yeah, absolutely, Smokey.
The way it works right now in China, so if you're on Facebook, the government tracks you, and if you have unacceptable views, they cut you off from certain parts of society. I gotta imagine the digital yuan will be an extension for that. If you make certain purchases or do business with certain people, they'll be able to track that, and it'll affect your social credit score. So I think those fears they do kind of apply to America with the America version of this coin. Right now, if you have certain views on Facebook or Twitter, you get censored or whatever. My worry is when the yuan, are they basically just beta testing their version of tracking, and is the U.S. government going to copy that? And in America, the way it would work is, would corporations, would everybody be able to see what purchases you're making? Is everyone going to be able to see who you're doing business with? Because it's all on the blockchain. And, are there going to be consequences to that? Are you going to be banned from Twitter or Facebook because you made this purchase, or you gave to this politician, or you did business with this person? So, those are my fears with the digital yuan. Is it starting, a new kind of tracking that's going to change our way of life?
Yeah, and as we go on to Justin, I'll add one more thing to it, and we kind of touch on it a little bit, but I just directly ask it: is this another form of trade war, another form of economic war? Right? Is there a race right now to figure out who's going to be the dominant digital currency to replace the U.S. dollar as a global currency? Because that's kind of what it looks like to me. What do you think?
I actually think you guys are really on point with about 90% of this. The transparency is one of the key things. I mean, that's what makes DeFi interesting, that you can verify what you're interacting with. If you have the right technical know-how, you can actually look at the code. But in that same way, the appeal of digital currency to a government like China is the ability to see how you spend every penny, when and where, and whom you interact with. And I'm a little less optimistic about the state of things in the U.S., as much as I try to be hopeful, because, we mentioned, I think it was Mr. Maverick that mentioned the list of senators that have attached their names to this. We see Senator Cruz and Senator Loomis often being cited as people who are forward thinking about cryptocurrency. But with this particular piece of legislation, it kind of shows me that they don't get it, that they think they will be able to impose these strict rules on someone else's digital currency, but not ours. So it's more about, I think, kind of what Draco was saying, that it's about whomever can get to this first. It's kind of like who can achieve primacy with a reserve currency in the digital landscape. And I actually think, so one of the things GridPlus did, we spun this out, something we incubated internally, but we worked on a protocol called Phonon, because we're all kind of privacy nuts to one extent or another. We all have different perspectives, but we all agree that it's important to have a way for people to transact with each other with the properties of cash. We give up a lot with cash. Everyone in crypto, we make fun of fiat, but not for some of its positive properties, which are that it's peer-to-peer, it's private, you don't leave a digital record that everyone or your government can inspect. So with Phonon in particular, we want to make it possible for people to do to send crypto as cash using secure hardware, whether it's your hardware wallet, the eSIM in your phone. So this is actually an issue that's really close to my heart. And as much as I think it's important to educate our representatives and try to work collaboratively instead of just being standoffish, we should also still be building things that are going to be unstoppable one way or the other as a sort of fail-safe against losing control of that narrative.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And so are you kind of describing like a privacy? I hate to put it into category, but like a privacy token, like Monero or something like that, or Zcash?
So those are really interesting projects. I think Zcash is doing some innovative stuff, but for me as a user, the reason I never really got involved with those platforms is I don't want to go use something explicitly because it has those privacy properties. I don't want to use a different coin for that. I just want privacy for what I'm already doing. So we're trying to bring that to one extent to the coins that people already have. And we have this like an alpha, so we've done transactions with Bitcoin and Ethereum using it. They're off-chain transactions, so there's no record. There's other cool stuff too. A project called Aztec is doing a roll-up on Ethereum where you can actually have DeFi composability. But once something's on the roll-up, like you should be able to transact privately using ZK snarks. I feel that this is an area that's going to get scrutinized by regulators as they dive in deeper, but I also think it's an important area to develop.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that all of us who are involved in crypto can see all of the baiting that goes on, like, oh, this is used for the dark web. You know, they even use the term say no to the Silk Road Act, right? Like they're trying to bait people into thinking that crypto is bad. I think over time people are going to realize that it's not, especially with what's going on in these more recent events where people are able to just donate cryptocurrency to countries for various reasons and to various causes. And people keep still trying to FUD that by saying, well, if you can do that to help out this war, then, for example, Putin can do this to avoid sanctions. So I think as more and more information comes out, people will realize, what digital currency is used for and what crypto is used for. We'll start to value privacy more and more and more, because even with what's gone on in the past, people have had their wallets tracked down, had their wallets confiscated or shut down, or people have tried to figure out what their identity is so that they could go after them personally for donating to certain causes. So I think it's important to have privacy. I think that's going to be one of the next steps that's going to come along with this innovation, is how important privacy is. So moving on to the next one, Thailand considers opening crypto payments for Russian and Ukrainian tourists. I know that this was a big one that you were talking about earlier, Smokey, so I'll go ahead and let you have the floor with this one.
Yeah, so I thought this was a huge story. So what happened is, due to MasterCard and Visa blocking Russians from using those services, Thailand they haven't done it yet, but the government is talking about implementing a system to accept payments from Russian tourists directly in crypto. So right now you have systems where MasterCard and Visa, they have these crypto cards, but the way those work is that my understanding is the way those work is, they sell the crypto that's in your account, convert it to cash, and then you use that debit card. This is actually a step past that, because what Thailand's talking about is coming up with a system so that tourists can use a payment processor that takes their crypto and exchanges it directly for goods and services. I think this would be a huge step for crypto, because if something like this is developed and then it scales and it becomes widespread, I mean, if something like this became popular, you wouldn't really even need a central exchange anymore. You could just put your crypto on a wallet and pay for goods and services.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Mr. Maverick?
Yeah, this is just one of those, I think, revolutionary ideas. Now, the how piece still has me scratching my head, just with the current ways and technology, that we have currently. I'm not sure how that would be possible, but I think you're right, Smokey. I do think that if they were able to incorporate something like this, it would be revolutionary because other people would leverage that, right? Absolutely. Or at least it would make it easier to leverage for other organizations. So, I think when we start seeing in the news some of the big institutions like Disney and things like that, when they start offering those types of things, I think that's when the world as we know it will begin to shift in their mindset. So
Yeah, Justin, what do you think about this? And to give one more aspect to it while we're talking about it, I think that this would also eliminate people having to convert their currency when they go to other countries. A lot of people, when they go to another country, end up going to an exchange and then exchanging their funds for something, right? And then if they lose their luggage, or if they get robbed or something like that, now they're losing cash, and that could be devastating, especially if they do a lot of money. But if you could use a card that you could just load up with a wallet, I mean, I feel like that would provide you a lot of security, and you could go anywhere. I mean, if it's crypto, you could go to any country with the same card and use it all over the place.
Yeah, I think so. But this also, you mentioned exchanging currency as well. They mentioned there's 4 proposals on the table for this. So I guess I'm curious about, are they going to be broadly accepting different cryptocurrencies so that anybody with a mobile wallet can come up and pay by QR code? With some of the blue chip cryptos, that's not necessarily efficient given like confirmation times. So I think the devil's kind of in the details on this one. But I do think that digital payments as infrastructure, it's an inevitability. It just makes sense on longer term. But it's the implementation that I'm curious about. The other interesting thing on this in the background is something that I've seen debated quite a bit, given the invasion of Ukraine, and it's about the merits of sanctions and who's really impacted. And I'm a bit conflicted on it, in that I have to admit, if I was a Russian citizen, who not necessarily someone who supported my government, I get that they're trying to exert pressure on everyone so that there is dissatisfaction with their government. But I also personally feel that perhaps punishing the weakest people, the most disadvantaged in terms of their access to financial services and tools, I find that problematic. So I mean, I guess that's kind of the impetus behind this initiative, that they want to attract people that have had their credit cards cut off or other payment channels. I don't know, I'm actually kind of curious to take a temperature on that from a lot of the rest of the group, because there's evidence that you'll see a lot of people arguing that the sanctions that are being exerted on Russia right now are having a tremendous impact. It is certainly impacting their economy quite a bit, but I'm also, it almost makes me, on a personal freedom level, more bullish on crypto, and I don't mean like central government coins. I mean specifically my ability to retain my own purchasing power and my own financial freedom, even in the face of something like this, because I'm pretty apolitical in a lot of ways. I don't subscribe to any particular team that I think represents me well. So the idea that I would be the one being punished for things going on a macro level doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, one of the things you're hitting on there when you talked about the sanctions and the people, we've talked about that on multiple shows prior to speaking with you tonight. And I think we all agree that the people that are being hurt the most are the civilians, the daily individuals, the people that need gas to go to work. And even more so, I've heard recently that a lot of the people in Russia are very remote. There's a lot of villages and things like that where they don't even have internet access. And we're not talking about 100 or 400 people. We're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that have no access to any of this, and they don't even know they're at war. They have no clue. But they're being affected because if you're in a remote area like that and you need food, think about how expensive that food's going to be to get now, because of how high the gas prices and everything else are going to be in their country and all the costs. So I think you're right. You're hitting it on the head with who's being affected by those sanctions. And I think that what the article that we're looking at here is another way of trying to get around some of this stuff. And personally, if you already know crypto, you don't really need this. I think it's a a good idea for people that don't know crypto, but for people who understand what crypto is, something like this isn't really needed. What do you think about that, Myron?
I love that you brought that up, Justin, because I was about to say that, because I think a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction is, hey, let's ban everything, for Russia and sanction all of them, and we're hurting Putin. Well, you're not, because they're prepared. All the people at the top, the oligarchs. I know that for the first time ever, I think that even some of the Swiss banks are kind of freezing their accounts, which hasn't ever been done in history. So they have been prepared for this, and it's just like you guys been saying, it's the common people that's getting hurt. I think what Visa, MasterCard, all these credit card companies did, I may be wrong, maybe there's some news out, but last I heard is that you can't use the cards in the foreign countries. I think maybe you can still use it within Russia, but so basically, imagine you're a tourist, in a country, and you're just using that card for all your payment, and now you're essentially broke. You have nothing with you. And that's a huge issue. So you're like, oh yeah, we're sanctioning Russia, we're hurting them. Well, the Russian people are not the government, right? The government is a separate entity. Then a lot of these people, they don't really have anything to do with the government. Even in the US, we have parties and things like that, but most people in the US, they couldn't care less about politics. And I think there's also a lot of articles that's so just it's like they don't understand. They're so far from reality. I think today I read there was an article talking about, hey guys, if gas went to $10 a gallon, it doesn't really matter because it's such a small portion of your salary. It's like, who are you polling here? Are you polling like
Right.
Elon Musk? Are you polling like the millionaires? Like, that is a huge deal for most people in the US if the gas went that high. But of course, if you're so far out there, you have, you're one of the wealthy, of course it doesn't matter to you. I mean, to the wealthy, inflation doesn't matter to you. And so for Thailand to do this, I think it's, maybe people say, hey, why are you guys doing this? We're supposed to be against Russia. Yes, you're against Putin and the government. You're not against the Russian people. I think it's a good thing they're doing this, right? I think this was also a good thing that Justin, as long as the technical part, how just you said like the transaction, the time and things like that doesn't make sense. So that's one area that I'm not familiar with. So, but I think the idea itself is a great idea, and is to bypass maybe some of these regulations or laws that with a first reaction is like, oh yeah, great, let's ban everything. Then maybe you really think about it. You're like, wait, what about all those people who are not even involved with this whole conflict that's all around the world? Now, like, what are they gonna do, right? And it just shows you, hey, maybe you don't, the ruble, you can't really use it, or maybe you can't use a card, but hey, if you have crypto, we can bypass all this, which is another reason to get crypto.
Yeah, I mean, as we move on to the next subject, I guess I'll ask this as something to think about or comment on going forward. But for people, it's going to be much more difficult for a country, an entire country, to avoid a sanction or multiple sanctions through cryptocurrency. But for people, individuals, citizens, if you think about it and step back from a macro level and look at how crypto's set up and what it's meant to do, I mean, this is exactly what it's for. When something like this happens, if all of your money isn't in rubles, right, then you can actually find a way to store your money. If you need to get out of that country or whatever you're going to do, your money is stored on the blockchain and you can access it later. This is the hedge against, again, this is something that might not have been thought of. I'm sure it was, but this is a hedge against this type of behavior. And I think that was, part of the whole reason why crypto exists. Owning your own custody of your own finances. And if those finances happen to be a different currency than the country that you live in, so be it. That's up to you. It's your prerogative. So I think that is important. And, I guess the way I looked at it was, as somebody who knows crypto, that this wouldn't be important. But I guess you're right, Myron. It would be very important for people that might not be very savvy in crypto. This would give them a huge opportunity, if you will. So one of the things that I am seeing some questions coming up in the chat. I want to encourage everybody, if you have questions about Grid, write them in the chat. We'll make sure we hit them tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to Justin. As he takes the floor, we'll bring up some slides and some the website. But we'll just ask you some questions and let you talk about your project and your product, GridPlus. So, sir, the floor is yours. Please tell us a little bit about Grid.
All right. GridPlus, there we go. Get the website. We are a US-based manufacturer of hardware wallets. We are initially focusing on one key area that has not really been focused on by the incumbents, which is smart contracts and Web3. In particular, when all this technology came out and we got our first wave of hardware wallets, everyone was using Bitcoin. So the two things you get out of a hardware wallet are safely storing your keys and verifying precisely what you're signing on a secure screen. So if your computer is compromised because you've been spending too much time on that site that Smokey sent you, then then no matter what, exactly what you're signing, and it doesn't matter whatever is going on with your phone or your computer, which are general environments that can never have that degree of security. So, but the thing is, though, with the old wallets, you only had to verify a recipient's address. But now people are using DeFi, decentralized exchanges. They're curating NFT collections. So you have to see a lot more. And so what we're really focusing on is giving users more useful information to keep themselves safe. We have so much more room to run, and there's really no finish line with this because we can always keep improving, and this technology is going to keep evolving. But we wanted people to rethink what a hardware wallet is. And it's interesting. So I've been noticing some of the questions coming in from YouTube, and one of the things that stands out right away to people is that this is a desktop device. So we set out right away thinking in terms of crypto achieving systemic importance. During the last bear market, that might have been a crazy perspective, but all of a sudden now we're rather vindicated with that. So we wanted to kind of emulate, partially to make users comfortable, but also to give more flexibility, precisely the ways that they're using traditional financial instruments now. Like when you go to the grocery store, you don't cash out your brokerage account and your bank account and take a backpack full of cash to go buy some Pringles. And in much the same way, I don't think people should be taking their private keys for their life savings everywhere. So we want to give people the ability to have sort of segregated accounts, just like you have your checking and savings, and break it down in an even more granular way. So that brings me to one of the questions that came up. People are like, well, what do I do when I'm on the go? We are actually kind of working and thinking in that framework of how you use your debit and credit cards on the go. So we're working with MetaMask Mobile right now to integrate what's called our permissions framework. And what that involves is, like, you set a limit from your device, you create a secure end-to-end encrypted channel between your device at home, which is connected to the internet, and your phone or whatever you're using on the go. And you have like a spending limit that you specify, and you'll be able to remotely generate hardware signatures. So that's coming later this year. We're pretty excited about that, and we hope people will think about how they use their crypto differently. And we want to make it more convenient. Yeah, and so I guess that leads into one more question too. I'm getting some more as I go. Are we going to have a travel case? I have traveled with mine using a phone hotspot, but this is really the way that we envision it being used. We talked about sanctions and crossing borders. Well, maybe a traditional hardware wallet is somewhat inconspicuous, but everyone takes their phone with them. And if you can access your finances on the go in an unstoppable way, we think that's a very powerful tool. And that's what we're building towards. We're a small team. We're still fewer than 20 people. We're US based. So we're looking to grow a lot right now. We have a lot of open positions and we're scaling up. So I don't know. I'm just really excited to be a part of this. And I think we're kind of skating to where the puck's going, and the rest of the industry is kind of slept on how rapidly this technology is evolving. So we're lucky to have that opportunity.
Yeah, one of the other questions that came up here, David Hayes asked, so if you have 10 safecards, is that the same as having 10 separate hardware wallets?
Yeah, so we have like one device that you can use as your signing hub for everything. And we have the safecards, which are exactly like the traditional credit and debit cards that are in your wallet. They have the same kind of physically unclonable chip. And we do two things with that. So the Lattice One hardware wallet works on its own, and it connects with as many devices as you want. So you guys know with one seed phrase, you can have an unlimited number of wallets, but they're all backed up by that. But if you've been in crypto a few years, you probably have a whole series of janky backups, with JSON files and PDFs and encrypted seed phrases or written seed phrases. So what we can do with this, you can either use the safeguards as a separate backup for a wallet, or you can actually use them to actively switch to whatever addresses are on there. So I have all my old wallets on different safeguards. I insert them into the Lattice, I enter my PIN, and then the device switches over to those. And then with like MetaMask or other wallet extensions, which you use as sort of the interface for all of this, you can mix and match addresses from all your wallets. So we want to have one secure signing hub, a better way of backing up, and readability and flexibility so that you can make better choices to keep yourself safe.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. One of the other questions that we came up with earlier was, would there be a way to still have your hardware wallet, the actual hardware wallet that's at your home that's connected, and potentially be able to use it with your phone, like on the like mobilely, right? So you already answered that question. My second question to that would be, would you be able to switch between wallets mobilely?
So you could switch between wallets, but it would have to be the ones that were actually on your Lattice, at least.
That makes sense.
And what we've built at this time, because to load up the other ones from safeguards, you've got to physically switch it. But again, with how you structure things with, your checking and debit accounts, I kind of envision people having money that they're comfortable spending on the go, and also, maybe like an NFT wallet so that they can trade and list on the go. So yeah, I mean, it still has that flexibility, but there will be some limitations on what you can do on the go by design. You don't want to make that completely open-ended. And you as the user will always be able to revoke those connections or adjust those limits. Saw another question come in too. Can we do something to back up an account with multiple cards? You need all of them to access the wallet. So yeah, like with multi-sig, the way I tell people to do this now is to use different cards with Gnosis Safe. That's great for Ethereum and EVM chains, but we're going to expand this further, and we want to do exactly that multi-sig. For your deep cold storage, that you're going to need 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 cards to be able to access those funds. And we talked a little bit about, before we actually started the show, we were just introducing ourselves. I was getting to know you guys. And we mentioned, the timing of the show is so we could put our kids to bed. We're in our 30s and stuff, or at least some of us are, apparently. And so for me, crypto inheritance has been on my mind a little bit. If I get hit by a bus, I don't think my wife's going to know how to unwind all my DeFi positions, which is something I think about a lot. But with a multi-sig, I have a solution for that, or at least for what I've set aside for cold storage that I don't touch. I can have, one with my attorney, one card at home, and another one in another location, and then having 2 or 3 of those where normally no one would have access to all of them. But they would unlock in case something happened. I mean, it's a little bit of a morbid thing to think about, but as we talk about how important and ubiquitous crypto is becoming, these are the things people do with money, and these are the things people think about. And this kind of last mile for what people expect to do with their money already from traditional services, we don't really have most of that in crypto yet. So there's so much more room for this technology to evolve.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. We talk a lot about security on our channel, and we talk about security very often, actually. And one of the things I encourage people to do is have somebody that's crypto savvy as a backup. For example, Smokey and I don't live that far away from each other. If something were to happen to me, I would want to tell my family, get a hold of this guy. Here's his information. If something happens to me, you can get a hold of him. I trust him. He's a good person. He'll help you get my assets, or he'll walk you through it, or whatever needs to be done. And you should always have something like that for yourself. And everybody in this chat should consider that, because if your wife, for example, has no interest in crypto, or your husband has no interest in crypto, and something happens to you, it could be gone forever. So just have a backup like that. And don't underestimate the relationships that you've created through these groups and through these individuals you've met over the years in crypto. There's really good people out there that you might know that would be able to help you in a situation like that. Which brings me to another point. You obviously have a vast knowledge of cryptocurrency just based on your conversation. You know a lot about crypto, the history of crypto, the meaning of crypto. So my question to you would be like, what got you into crypto? What got you interested in crypto, and how did that all get started?
Well, it's a pretty unceremonious origin story. I wish I had something cooler to say. But I used to use BitTorrent a lot, and I pirated tons of music. And the way you would get more credits was to donate for server bills. And the only way that they were accepting them on the sites I was using was in Bitcoin. So I kind of heard of Bitcoin a little bit, but I wasn't super interested in it. And so that was my first experience buying Bitcoin, was just for that purpose. I viewed it as a transactive thing. I don't even want to think of what those donations are worth in today's dollars. It's probably terrifying.
I was about to ask you that. Do you ever go back and calculate? I donated how much?
I have actually gone out of my way to not calculate it, because you can drive yourself insane in crypto thinking about the opportunity costs. If I just traded this perfectly at this time, oh man, it would have been, so different. It's very easy to wear yourself down with that. There's always more opportunities than you can grab, but we're all lucky to be involved as we are at this point. But yeah, so no, I have not gone back and looked. And then it is one of those things that just sort of like slightly starts, growing. It gets on your mind a little bit. For me, I don't even know what even initially sparked it with Ethereum. So when I first heard about Ethereum, I think I remember seeing like a snippet of Vitalik Buterin, and he was at this like libertarian festival in New Hampshire called the Pork Fest. And it was only like a short clip, but he really stood out to me. I didn't think too much of it about it at the time, and I came back to it later. But I really became like obsessed with crypto around 2016 after dabbling earlier, just because I became enamored with how much you could really do with a more robust blockchain that allowed you to build decentralized infrastructure and allowed you to build all the things that we're starting to take for granted already, like decentralized exchanges. So somewhere along the lines, it became like I was a Reddit lurker, and then I signed up on Reddit in like 2017 just to talk about crypto. And then my background too, also not especially cool. I worked in financial services for State Street and JP Morgan Chase, and it's very like niche stuff. But I remember at the time, like 2016, I'd gone to this internal conference, and there's this big cheesy cardboard thing that said like blockchain. There's like blocks flying through space. But I remember thinking at the time, I was like, man, this stuff it's not just crazy internet people. Like a lot of people are focusing in, and I should be paying attention to this. So little signals like that started adding up, and slowly but steadily, it took over my entire life.
Yeah, another one of the questions from our audience. I think this is more related to transactional and like maybe potentially at the end of the year taxes type stuff. Will there be an easy way to export the reporting of transactions for accounting?
So there's cool tools for that, but we don't ever want to have that kind of detail retained, and we don't touch user data. It's a hot potato. We really want nothing to do with it. And it even comes down to when you order. We launched in the wake of, I don't know if you guys remember the Ledger data leaks, but when we were launching, people were immediately on us on day one for, what's your data retention policy? Because they had their home addresses leaked. And that was like almost 300,000 people. And so we even, once your order completes, we actually delete your data. And we don't want to touch it. So, but there's tools to do this stuff that are great, that are tied to the addresses you interact with. On Ethereum in particular, and they're getting cross-chain, there's Zapper and Xerion. There's a new accounting-specific one called Rotkey, which I'm keeping an eye on. So all of these things make the insanity of trying to account for all your crypto transactions a little more bearable when tax time comes around. We aren't touching that piece. There's a lot of smart people working on it who are specialists, but we're more about giving you the tools to manage your assets. But we are about we don't want to touch your data, and we want to ensure your privacy to the best extent that we can.
I actually like that answer a lot. Especially after what we talked about with our news articles and our current events, that's a very good stance for you guys to have, in my opinion. One of the other questions that we wanted to ask you is, what made you and your constituents decide to make this hardware wallet product in the face of other hardware wallets that are out there that are seemingly, I wouldn't say successful, but functional, right? So you've got, I guess the pool that you'd be competing in with the major ones would be Treasure and, the Ledger. So what inspired you guys to make your product?
So the drive was initially, this whole crew was they were the first company to spin out of Consensus as an incubator in 2017. And they had worked with an energy company called LO3 Energy to do this sort of proof of concept project called the Brooklyn microgrid, where they had solar panels on all these rooftops, and they allowed them to basically trade energy on a small scale between them, share as needed based on the actual live demand from people living in those buildings. So for them, they'd done just sort of the back end work on that for LO3 as contractors through Consensus. It was about solving real world problems and just not having the tools to do this yet. That was also the genesis of Phonon. They were thinking in terms of like, well, how do you do a massive amount of payments? If blocks are only coming at X as an interval. And so that's why they were thinking about off-chain payments, but there wasn't really anything to support these more complicated use cases. Ledger and Trezor, they're focused in a different area. I think Ledger is exploring Web3 more, but Trezor is like pretty firmly planted in the Bitcoin category, where they're not interested in necessarily tackling these emergent issues. And so we wanted something that was flexible. So it's sort of like a pragmatic thing. The co-founder who created the actual hardware design, Dr. Carl Creeder, he did teardowns on those wallets in 2017, looking at vulnerabilities. And so they were thinking from early on, like, how do we make something more flexible for when crypto is mainstream? We've got further to go to deliver on that promise. I mean, you can already see the questions that people are looking for more from the device, but we made a really flexible piece of hardware. So it's only constrained by time and effort at this point. So
Man, I'm a simple guy. I saw this a couple of months ago when my friend showed me, and I was like, man, dude, this looks beautiful. Just the aesthetics of it. Then the other thing I saw was the card. I thought it was a credit card at first. The way it looked, I mean, it looks just, you said the pretty much just functions like the. So is there a plan in the future to maybe, just like the article we talked about Thailand, that one day can use that card for actual purchases?
Yeah. So actually, the chips are the same, and the card reader is the same kind, and we're actually compliant with a security standard called PCI, which is what's used for credit card terminals. We'd have to apply to be approved for that use case, but there's no reason why a third-party partner couldn't create point-of-sale software for the device that would allow you to take traditional credit card payments and crypto. So the hardware can do it, but that's not a light lift on the software side. It actually kind of mentions another cool thing that ties into both mainstream applications and like how hardcore the team is about privacy. So the on this, you can just kind of barely see it. There's like these little kind of copper tracings around the middle of that little breakout diagram. That's called it's an Lds Anti-Tamper Mesh. It's like a 3D maze of electrical traces with a waveform going through it all the time. So if there's a reverse engineering attempt or an intrusion attempt, what it will do is it basically will fry your secure enclave like a self-destruct tripwire. Having an anti-tamper mesh is a requirement for a credit card terminal, but also not to poke the bear too much, but the language used at the time was that we wanted to create the first hardware wallet that was resistant to a sophisticated state-level actor. So, you never know if you really hit that. There's no guaranteed security, but so far so good. We actually sell safecards loaded with ETH. No one's claimed it yet and drained the accounts. So We've got bounties out there, and we hope some smart people will try and do their best to poke holes in things so we can harden the device further.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So can you expand on that just a little bit more, because you said that your tamper security mesh could potentially destroy, like, could you explain that portion of it again, because that was interesting.
Okay, yeah. So the idea is, with traditional hardware wallets, there are some known vulnerabilities where a very sophisticated party can extract your seed phrase and then try and brute force the PIN in a regular computer without any limit on the number of attempts. We wanted to provide not just security for people using the device, in a remote context over the internet. We wanted physical in-person security too. So we didn't want to allow that attack vector. So it really does. It destroys your secure enclave where your private keys are stored, if it's triggered. And we actually think that's important for both the most paranoid among us, but also it's for enterprise level use as well. You can't have a physically vulnerable device securing assets at an exchange, or if you are a government agency using CBDCs. So crypto's entering a systemically important, much more serious phase, and we need more serious tooling to support that for everybody.
I don't think you could be too paranoid in crypto. I mean, being as safe as possible is the goal, I think. And I think that you guys are hitting the nail on the head with being overly safe than not being safe enough. So no, that I think you guys are right on there. Another question that we had from the group, I know that it's been difficult, and this isn't a shameless plug, but it's been difficult to get the grid because I guess you guys do it like in lots, right? Like in sections. One of the people were asking here, is there how do you get the GridPlus? Like, how do you get notified that it's being done? And is there a possibility of maybe setting up some sort of group buy or something like that where we can buy them in bulk?
Yeah, we could do something like that, but really a lot of it is just kind of the nature of anyone working in the hardware space in any industry right now, because due to the pandemic, we've got logistical disruptions. So, shipping times are further out, and there's been a microchip shortage. So for us, we had to forecast demand basically 3 to 6 months out for ordering components. And we only really kind of hit this organic inflection point where demand took off in fall. So we're just kind of finally scaling up and making up for that. Next month, we should have pretty broad ongoing availability, and we'll be making quite a bit more than we had done in our initial runs. And we're going to try and stock an international fulfillment center or two, first being in the EU, just because with VAT tax, import duties are like a huge friction point for people living in the EU. So yeah, there'll be much more available soon, and just hang tight a little bit longer. But yeah, we love doing stuff with individual communities, and we can definitely do something with Bourbon-n-Blockchain because, in crypto, there's a lot of people that make a fast buck, but we want to be here for a long time. You only do that by building the trust. You mentioned at the beginning, Draco, the educational element of this and with security. People getting into crypto, they don't know what to believe. Everyone's shilling them something. You give people a decent foothold and honest advice without trying to sell them something, and I think you're going to create an advocate for a very long time. And that's what we're seeing. The initial people that we worked with closely, we helped them get set up on video, or we talk to them directly on our Discord. They appreciate that. It's an unusual thing from a company providing a service like this, and they've basically become our advertising, the fact that they're happy with us. So we love them and appreciate them doing it.
Yeah, and I think you guys are finding yourselves in a unique situation where you're providing a product, but so many people like it, so many people are interested in purchasing it, that it's becoming difficult to keep your product available. And I think that's a great thing. And on top of that, what you just mentioned at the end there, you're saying that we're humanizing cryptocurrency, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the user needs to know how to do this stuff through education and conversation. You could do it by just reading it all and figuring it out, but you're going to end up going through pitfalls. You're going to lose money. Most likely, you're going to become discouraged. So by humanizing this and helping people and having a conversation, getting into a good group, that's how you learn how to do all these things, and that's where you find confidence. So yeah, absolutely, I completely agree with you on that topic as well.
One other thing about this that I didn't entirely recognize when I signed up to work with GridPlus is that, we're helping people self-custody their assets. I mean, it's a pretty big responsibility. And, it's something we take really seriously. I have had some moments where my stomach flipped when I hear some horror stories from people. Luckily, in just about every single case so far, we haven't had any major problems on users' behalf on our watch. Sooner or later, there will be something terrible. But yeah, man, just thinking about it and talking to people directly and understanding how serious self-custody is to people when their own money is on the line, like we get it and we take it really seriously, and we're lucky to have customers trust us like this.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Justin. Support in the crypto industry as a whole is lackluster. So what can they expect out of GridPlus? Say somebody buys this device, they're having trouble or they hit a pitfall, right? How difficult or how easy is it for someone to receive some assistance from the GridPlus team?
So we're US based, and we have an open Discord. We can try and answer product and setup questions. I noticed since I shared the link to this on the GridPlus Discord, our media guy, JT Nickel from Kansas City, came on and he's answering some questions in the comments. He hangs out on there. The team hangs out on there. Realistically, though, as we're getting a lot bigger, so it's going to be, I think, hard to strike that balance between maintaining that personal touch, which is unique. As we grow, we're growing the customer service team. We've got a couple of great people. We solve tickets. I think it's generally 1 to 2 business day max, and that's for more complicated stuff. We help people get set up on video in the Discord, and we also see community members help each other out. There is a point where at scale, that's going to be difficult to maintain, but it's very much on our mind because we feel that this is something that differentiates us. So that's the level of support you get today. We're going to have to work hard to maintain that as we grow. But I think that's important, especially with when you talk to customers every day and you can see the anxiety sometimes when people think they did something wrong or they lost some of their crypto. Man, it feels really good to help them out, and it's important to have that lifeline. So we hope we can keep doing that. We hope we also head off a lot of questions through good educational resources like our knowledge base and video tutorials. So it's something we take really seriously, and we hope we can keep maintaining this high standard as we go.
Yeah, I think that pushes into another question that somebody asked in the chat. One of our very own Christine, Only Eyes for Crypto, she asked, is GridPlus hiring, or are they expanding? And I think you kind of hit on that a little bit, but this would be more specific.
Yeah, so we are hiring right now. It is primarily engineering roles, crypto, a Java card engineer, software engineer. But we did just hire another customer service rep. We were overwhelmed this time. There were so many amazing people. It was almost hard to sort through everything. I think we would have been very lucky to have almost any of them. Yeah, we're hiring, and we're going to be growing quite a bit this year. I could see probably by year end team size doubling. So it's not just going to be software and firmware engineers. We need to, we need regular people. So JT, I love him. He's one of the people that got me into crypto in 2016 and 2017. I met him through the old ETH Trader subreddit. Now he's one of the mods on ETH Finance. When I was getting my head around Ethereum, he used to hang out by his barbecue pit in his backyard in Kansas City and just kind of shoot the breeze about Ethereum. And he was someone that kind of gave me that initial toehold on the technology. He was a teacher for 18 years, and I was thrilled to bring him on as our media guy, sort of our educator, because that was my relationship with him when I was getting into Ethereum. So after I got so excited gushing about JT, I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, we're hiring not just technical people, but it takes so much more because education is a critical aspect of it. support and the business administrative side is going to be growing at pace with the tech side as well. So keep your eyes peeled if you're interested in getting into the crypto industry. Don't just look at our board. I'm happy to help try and make connections if you think there's a fit or another company in crypto that, you know, maybe someone in our network can help hook you up with. Drop by our Discord. We'd love to chat whenever we get the chance. Sometimes it's hard when we're busy, but I'm appreciative of the people that did that for me. You know, that were really welcoming, and I'm probably lucky that I looked into like a good network through Reddit. And it was funny, you know, Draco, you said at the beginning, like, you know, don't underestimate the ties you make through this. A lot of these people are my close friends now. So JT especially. I mean, I flew out from Boston to Kansas City to go barbecue at his house, and it was like, at the time, it felt like one of the craziest things I ever did, and it's a special memory now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that is important because a lot of people underestimate how much time they spend on here doing research and talking to people and getting to know people. And when you ask them about their friendships and whatnot, they don't even consider that they have a great friend, somebody that they know really well, right in front of them that they've been talking to for months or even years. So don't underestimate that. And you know, those relationships are powerful. But with that being said, you know, we'd really appreciate you coming on here tonight. To be honest, you know, I learned a few more things after doing my own research. I learned more from you about your project and your product, and it's really, really good. And I'm pretty bullish about it. I like the fact that, you know, everything's made in America, that you guys have a great, you know, customer service base, that you guys have really solid ideals for crypto, and that you guys understand crypto. And I think that's very important. I mean, I could say probably a handful of projects right now that we could all agree on that they probably don't even really understand crypto, but they're in it. And, you know, that's unfortunate. You know, and with that being said, you know, it's wonderful to, you know, to hear a like-minded individual in the space that's trying to further the space in a positive manner. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you coming tonight. You know, if anybody else on the panel here has any other specific questions, please step up and ask. We've had a lot of questions in the chat tonight. Make sure before you guys leave that you like the video and then subscribe if you'd like to talk to us in our Discord, Bourbon-n-Blockchain, where we talk about all types of crypto-related information. We do community-based research, and we talk about cryptocurrency all the time. That's what we do there. We talk about security, and we're going to be talking a lot more about Grid in the near future. And with that being said, you know, again, we really appreciate you being here. And what we typically do with our guests is we allow them to kind of do a sign off or maybe have some words of encouragement or words of wisdom, if you will, before we end the show. So is there anything you'd like to tell the audience or, you know, the individuals that are listening tonight?
You know, 2 scotches deep, that's a lot to ask, you know, for words of wisdom, something profound here. But no, I just want to say, you know, keep at it. There's so much in this space that's distracting, but there's so much of value. I've met so many great people through it. So surround yourself with the right people and stick with it. And you're way ahead of the curve by diving in this deep at this time. So thanks so much for having me. It was fun. The time flew by. I was just kind of like hanging out with my buddies at home. So this was a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming, man.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. It was great.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for showing up. Thank you, Bourbon-n-Blockchain supporters. Thank you, everybody in the chat. We'll see you guys all here soon. We're here Tuesdays and Thursdays nights, and we're typically on at 8:30 p.m. So have a good night. Thank you very much for watching.